Hello everyone, and welcome back to Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. So today we're going to come to an end of the series of videos I've been doing based on Elizabeth and Margaret, the book. It's been quite a journey, and it's been so interesting to find out about Queen Elizabeth and her sister Margaret based on the book. So let's find out what happens next. In March 1999, Princess Margaret was on holiday in Moustique when she stepped into the bathtub to wash her hair, and she scalded her feet because of a faulty thermostat. The soles of her feet were burned so badly she was unable to walk and had to stay in bed. She had to stay at a friend's beach house, and she was cranky and depressed. Princess Margaret's lady-in-waiting, Anne Glenconner, flew out from London to take care of her. Princess Margaret's feet didn't seem to be getting any better, and the lady-in-waiting wanted to go back to London for specialized treatment. Princess Margaret didn't want to go because she didn't feel well enough. Finally, Anne, the lady-in-waiting, called Queen Elizabeth at Buckingham Palace and spoke to her. Elizabeth talked to Princess Margaret and got her to fly home on the Concorde. Princess Margaret had her legs propped up on a milk crate on the way back. Lady Glenconner said the Queen was wonderfully understanding, concerned, and supportive. When she got home, Princess Margaret was treated in various ways, and they even used leeches to help heal her, but this didn't help accelerate the healing process. Colin Glenconner had his own theory about Margaret's accident, and he felt it was a cry for help. He thought that Princess Margaret wanted sympathy from her sister and mother because she didn't get much comfort when she had her first stroke, even though she said she didn't want to be treated like an invalid. He said she was depressed, and in the royal family, you're not allowed to be depressed. The Queen banned wheelchairs from Balmoral and Sandringham to encourage her sister to walk. She told Princess Margaret, "Put away your sticks and practice walking." The Queen felt like she needed to pull herself together. A family friend said that no one was allowed to be ill in that family. The family not understanding made Margaret feel more depressed. Princess Margaret started to slowly get better. Her Ford Galaxy SUV was modified to take her wheelchair, and she preferred that to walking. The Queen Mother was determined to keep walking to the end of her life, but there was a funny thing that there was a footman at Buckingham Palace waiting on the top floor elevator. The wheelchair was meant for the Queen Mother, but Princess Margaret would sit down in the chair, and Queen Elizabeth would say, "For God's sakes, Margaret, get out. That's meant for Mummy." And the same thing happened at Windsor Castle. It was the Queen Mother's 100th birthday, and at the time Princess Margaret was 70. The Queen Mother was mad when Margaret got her wheelchair once more. So, on January the 4th, 2001, Princess Margaret suffered another stroke. It was mild, and she was admitted to the hospital for 10 days. Before she left the hospital, she had her hair done so that she'd look good for the TV cameras. By early March, she was more positive, and she was eating again and able to walk without a cane or wheelchair. She started to wear colorful clothes, and Queen Elizabeth was very happy to see the improvement. She had been worried about her sister, but near the end of March, Princess Margaret had a third stroke. It left her incapacitated, and she had to use her wheelchair again. Her eyesight was affected, and she lost almost all her vision. Princess Margaret managed to get back some movement in her legs after several weeks, and then she got some partial sight back also. In June, she surprised everybody by turning up to Prince Philip's 80th birthday. The Queen gave a few words of tribute, and then she said, "And now my sister has something for you." A dancer from the Royal Ballet School entered the hall, followed by 20 of his peers. Princess Margaret organized a special birthday version of the hornpipe for her brother-in-law. After that event, Princess Margaret felt like being by herself. She would be in her dimly lit bedroom listening to the radio, and she stopped socializing. She was dependent on others in order to do simple things, and that embarrassed her. She once loved to have male company, but now she only wanted a few close friends to read to her. One time the princess wanted Anne Glenconner to read a book from Roddy Llewellyn about plant seeds. She loved the topic, though Anne thought it was boring. And one time the Queen stopped in to talk to her, and she was in a bad mood. Her lady-in-waiting was with her. Margaret wanted to listen to The Archers, a soap opera, and kept saying shh whenever the Queen wanted to talk to her. And Lady Glenconner said, "The Queen can't stay long. Would you like me to help pour the tea?" And she turned off the radio, poured each of them tea, and left the room. August the 4th, 2001, Princess Margaret made a rare appearance to celebrate her mother's 101st birthday. Princess Margaret wasn't doing well, and the Queen and the Queen Mother tried to keep her from attending. They thought she would be upset by the reaction of the people to her appearance. Princess Margaret, she insisted on going, and she was happy to be there. She wanted to support her mother on her big day. Princess Margaret spent Christmas and New Year's with the family at Sandringham, and she kept in her room and refused to eat. Anne Glenconner came to the rescue. She wheeled her out of the bed, got her to watch the Antiques Roadshow on TV, and convinced her to eat a jam tart. When Queen Elizabeth found out about the small triumph, she responded with surprise and gratitude. A jam tart. It was a moment for humor. During this time, Princess Margaret preferred to be alone, and she didn't want to speak on the phone to her family. One day, the Queen Mother got tired of not being able to speak to Margaret, and she arrived without warning to her place and went straight into her bedroom. For a time, Princess Margaret spoke to Lord Snowdon on the phone, and Roddy came to visit, but near the end she refused male visitors, saying, "I look so awful now." Princess Margaret said to a maid, "If I was a dog, I could be put down." February the 8th, 2002, she had another stroke, and she died early the next morning at the hospital with her children at her bedside. Within hours of her death, Buckingham Palace released a statement saying, "Her beloved sister, HRH, Princess Margaret, died peacefully in her sleep at 6:30 a.m. Later, the Queen told the Queen Mother. Princess Margaret wished to be buried at St. George's Chapel at Windsor to join her beloved Papa. The Queen went to Kensington Palace, where the Margaret's coffin was in her bedroom, surrounded by her favorite photos, seashells, and other things she cherished. Her children were waiting at the front door together with long-serving members of the staff. The Queen went into her room for a few minutes to say her final goodbye to her younger sister. Her coffin was draped in a standard and adorned with a spray of white lilies and roses, and then she was taken to the Queen's Chapel at St. James's Palace, her hearse preceded by Scottish pipers. On February 15th, the day of the funeral, the Queen Mother was brought by helicopter from Sandringham and taken to the service at St. George's Chapel in a wheelchair. The organist played melodies from Swan Lake before the service began. Princess Margaret was a planner, and she had planned her funeral, the music, prayers, and hymns for her final farewell. When the coffin was leaving the chapel, the Queen Mother managed to struggle to her feet in acknowledgement of her daughter. The Queen Elizabeth was overwhelmed, too, as the coffin was placed in the hearse. She had one hand gripped on her niece, and the other brushed away a tear. Then the Scottish song, "The Desperate Battle of the Birds," was played. The song was chosen by her daughter. It was a metaphor for Princess Margaret's life. In the popular imagination, Princess Margaret was thought of as being a fast-living socialite who spent most of her time partying or lounging around in the Caribbean. What was less known was that she was also dedicated to her sister and wanted to uphold the values of the monarchy. The Queen appreciated it, and time after time she defended Margaret from unfair attacks by lawmakers and others. The Reverend Canon Barry Thompson stated, "Margaret should be remembered not only for her mischievous and vivacious nature, but also her loyalty and sense of duty, her faithfulness toward her family and friends, her energy and enthusiasm, her quick wit and sound advice, and her depth of knowledge and her love of life." Princess Margaret was then cremated. It was the first time in 60 years a royal member had that done, and she made the journey to the crematorium alone as she requested. A coffin wouldn't fit in the royal crypt, so she chose cremation so that her ashes could be next to her beloved father, as she always wanted. After the service, the Queen took Anne Glenconner to one side and thanked her for bringing Roddy into Margaret's life. She told her, "I'd like to say, Anne, it was rather difficult at moments, but I thank you so much for introducing Princess Margaret to Roddy. He made her really happy." Queen Elizabeth had years ago banned Roddy from her houses and tried to keep him away from Margaret's 50th birthday. But having to deal with her own children and their marriages, she became more understanding. Roddy had stood by her through the good and the bad times. Just 2 months after Margaret's death, the Queen Mother died. It was the afternoon of Easter Saturday at the Royal Lodge at Windsor. Queen Elizabeth was at her side. Her final resting place was by her husband in St. George's Chapel. It was a moment the Queen had been dreading. Queen Elizabeth had told friends her biggest nightmare was losing her mother and sister at the same time. It was a blow to the Queen, and she took consolation from the public affection for her mother. 200,000 members of the public filed past her coffin to pay their respects. In a broadcast for the nation, the Queen expressed her thanks for the public's expressions of support and sympathy. Queen Elizabeth faced her fears and dealt with the passing of her sister and mother with grace. The book let us see how close a bond the Queen had with her sister, and it was strong from the moment Princess Margaret was born until the day she died. Princess Margaret was a bit jealous of her sister for doing all the things before she did because she was the oldest sister, but later she paved her own way. She was self-taught, and that helped her when she felt she wasn't given enough education growing up. Though it looked like Princess Margaret was flitting around having fun all the time, she took her royal duties seriously. She made up her mind she was going to be of service to her sister and defend her for all her days, and she did just that. Queen Elizabeth knew that, and Queen Elizabeth was Princess Margaret's defender also. I'm glad they had each other. It made things easier to handle in their public lives. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, if you could give it a thumbs up, it would be greatly appreciated. I had a request from a viewer to do some videos on a book about Queen Elizabeth II, and I will do that. She is such a fascinating figure, it will be an honor to do it. I wish everyone a good day, and tune in again soon for another episode of Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. Thank you. Bye.